Is Ref OP? Today we're going to answer this question, but the first problem is that, like many others, I had been avoiding Arena recently due to all of the quest rollback problems and desynchronization between the accounts. So last week I jumped back in again to test it out after most people were reporting that it was fixed, and I am happy to say that I have had no issues at all whatsoever hopping back and forth between the two games since I came back to it. All XP and levels have synced together just fine, and I haven't lost any trader rep by playing Arena either. It's not guaranteed that you won't have issues yourselves, but just from my experience coming back this week, it's been basically flawless. However, many people have been playing Arena since day one, and clearly patch 15 has shaken up progression quite considerably, with many accusations of the early wipe being basically removed, and to some extent this is true. The progression that Arena provides, either by itself or when used in conjunction with the base game, can produce incredible results in terms of XP specifically, allowing players to very quickly bypass the 1 to 15 process before the flea market, and gives a bunch of cash too, which can be transferred in massive quantities, up to 1 million rubles a day for standard accounts and 1.5 million rubles per day for EOD and unheard. But money can only take you so far these days in Tarkov, as you're firstly locked to certain items due to trader level and questing, and in a more general sense there are items that you simply can't buy. This list is growing as time goes on and now includes a more rational set of ammo and armors as of this wipe. This is where Ref comes in. The offerings that are most notable start at the later trader levels, and are those in particular that provide value that is either very early compared to the other traders or not available elsewhere at all. Ref 1 and 2 are kind of whatever, except for maybe the grumpy key, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. So Ref only really gets going at level 3. The two most notable items here are 7.62x51 ammo M80 and the AACPC rig with class 5 GAC plates, a staple of the last wipe but are now much more restricted. M80 is an important ammo in EFT, and it has a complicated history as it sits right in the sweet spot of penetration to practically ignore class 4 armor at close to medium distances. A throwback for those of you who remember that you used to be able to get M80 on Peacekeeper 2. Most of the player base still wears class 4 for at least the first month or two, but is still quite common later on as well, surprisingly. With the ammo shakeup, M80 is still banned on the flea market, but it was shifted up another trader level from Peacekeeper 3 to Peacekeeper 4, requiring at least level 37 to get access, and it also requires the quest Revision Lighthouse to be completed too in order to unlock it. When we compare this to Ref level 3, which is technically achievable at level 25, this seems insane. But it's not quite as easy as that. You need 0.5 trader rep in order to achieve this with Ref, which is not straightforward to do by level 25, especially on standard with Arena bought additionally, although I will admit this is probably a minority of players. EOD people get an extra 0.2 to start with as usual, but even then you need to complete a decent number of his specific questline tasks to get there. The first blocker is the quest to find various food items. This is not so straightforward early due to the 7 Pevco requirement. Most people do this through Nutrition 3, but that on its own gatekeeps much of the potential early Ref 3 action because these are pretty rare to find in raid in large numbers. Killing scavs and PMCs for the next couple of quests is not a real blocker specifically, however annoying using a packer can be, but the task line starts to get much harder when handing in armoured plates, and especially the one requiring Caban and Kolontai guard kills. With the low boss spawn rates early wipe, this just makes the task logistically difficult to get done because 9 raids out of 10 they won't even spawn. Even if you manage to get through all of this, To Great Heights Part 2 is typically where most players stop with Ref because it requires you to get 1700 ARP. This is Arena's version of ranked MMR points, and unless you have a decent team to play with, this is incredibly difficult and time consuming as a solo player, unless you are one of the people that played a lot of Arena previously and started back up with the wipe at 2k. So let's just assume for a moment that you don't do this quest. Well, that leaves you with 0.48 rep, just shy of Ref 3, and with quite a bit of work done up until this point. But of course, that is only one part of the story. As well as the regular quests that you get from Ref in the base EFT, we also have the Arena dailies and weeklies that are present within Arena itself. Each daily gives you 0.01, and each weekly gives from 0.01 to 0.03, meaning that per week you can grab somewhere between 0.22 and 0.24 if you do them all. Those that have become accustomed to not doing the daily tasks in the base game are missing out here for sure, as you don't lose trader rep for re-rolling. This means that you can spend rubles to re-roll them all until they're in the same game mode. For me, I always choose Last Hero because it's super fast and I don't have to watch other people play while I'm dead. Despite the fact that this becomes quite expensive after a couple of re-rolls, because you generally make a decent wedge of cash when you win in Arena, plus the ruble reward for completing the tasks, you typically end up with more money than you started with anyway. With this context, getting to Ref 3 at 0.5 rep isn't actually that hard after all, and even without doing any of Ref's actual quests in the base game, it is possible to get him after a week and a half with the EOD rep perks and 2.5 weeks without it. Is that much better than playing the base game? I'm not so sure. Personally, I have just gotten to Ref 3 and 0.5 rep after starting to finally do the daily quests after building up the courage to get back in there, and having completed Ref's quest up until Create a Distraction Part 2, which is the boss one, so it didn't take all that long, maybe a couple of days going back and forth between the two games and hitting up the dailies every day in Arena. But again, this is coming from having Nutrition Unit level 3 for the early quest with the Pepcos, and also having the armor plates saved up for that one quest in the middle. Now, alongside the M80 purchase for all these GP coins you've been earning in Arena for completing the dailies, we also have the AACPC armor. This is one of, if not the best armor in the entire game, technically speaking, for PvP, for reasons that I have elaborated on extensively in the past, although in the early wipe this is not necessarily strictly true due to the lack of neck protection. From around a month in though, most players are going to be using ammo with 30 plus pen, especially with the flea market allowing trader flipping, which makes the likes of M855 and 762 PS available to the level 15 plus masses, and neck armor then mostly redundant in PvP fights. Why does this matter? Well, last wipe players could effectively spawn in infinite class 5 plates and AACPC armors themselves, using the lavatory after Living High Part 2 on Ragman, which allowed you to input a single class 5 plate and get 2 out. This craft in particular has been removed, and the others like it. The Tactec, for example, has removed the plate alchemy aspect to it, requiring 2 plates in for 2 plates out. This means that Ref has become the only source of this plate on level 3 traders, with the only other alternative being the Hex Attack Barter at Ragman 4 after PMC level 42. So between M80 and the AACPC, you can get a pretty stacked loadout fairly early if you path to it specifically, with M80s costing 2 GP coins for a box of 20, and the 7 box personal limit means you can get up to 140 per reset for 14 GP coins, and the AACPC costing 22. Arena dailies are giving me around 50 GP coins per go at the moment, which means that I have around 500 total, equivalent to 5,000 rounds of M80 or 22 AACPC armor rigs, or a mix of the two. I personally think that the AACPC is slightly too cheap in GP coins, but that's kind of by the by. If we think about the base game again, that M80 has to go into something. The Black MDR is still banned on the fleet and requires either Peacekeeper or Mechanic 4, and has been suitably nerfed since last wipe on recoil. The Scar H is a love it or hate it kind of weapon that is also banned and requires mostly level 4 traders, but there is one barter that sneaks into Mechanic 3 which you can get after level 30, and the FAL was also hit with the nerf bat on recoil too. Outside of the full auto options, the SR25 is very inexpensive this patch, partly due to its availability on rogues, and you can buy it on the flea now, and it's one of the best options to combine with M80, especially if you don't have trader levels. The AACPC itself is strong, but on a relative basis, it really is the class 5 plate doing 95% of the heavy lifting, so the technical reasons that make it the quote best PvP armor are small optimizations in the grand scheme of a raid. If you think that this SR25 with M80 and AACPC loadout is overpowered, let's just compare it to what I would consider the meta progression level 3 trader loadout instead in the base game. This would be a Prepel 3 Karund front plate with the propane armor and an RD704 or an AK104 loaded with 41 pen PP bullets bought from the flea market. Either that or maybe a G36 with M856A1. PP has the same pen as M80, and while it doesn't do quite as much damage, the guns that we can use for it are full auto, which as we just saw is a little troubling these days when we move up the caliber power. They aren't complete laser beams of course, but neither is anything in 762 NATO. I think this combo stands up to the Ref loadout for the most part, making the Ref progression certainly in the top end of things that are viable, but not necessarily insane like some are making it out to be. There is another level to Ref, level 4, but because this takes 1.2 rep up from the 0.5 of level 3, it is quite a distance and is unlikely to be gotten in the short term. There's certainly some interesting things here though over the base traders. Access to the Zabralo, which can't be bought normally until completing some super high level quests in the base game, and this is both useful for grabbing the class 6 plates out of it, because no one seriously uses the Bralo itself as a base carrier anymore, as well as using for the good old times questline. As far as I'm aware, this is the one single place that you can get class 6 on the traders directly. He also sells a Juk Digital, which looks insane because this is another class 6 default armor, but bearing in mind that this one comes with no plates at all. You can see that this is the case on the flea market, and shout out to my Discord peeps for spotting this one. Some of the ammo here is really good too. 10 round boxes of PS12B and 20s of 45 AP are kind of whatever because you can get these on the regular traders at some point, so why spend the GPs, right? But SP6 is locked behind capturing outposts that many players can't be bothered to do, me included, and is level 42 anyway, and 762 BP is a craft only after level 45. This makes them interesting on Ref because you can get them here for GPs instead. You can also get the Spear, which is now banned from the Flea and is otherwise locked behind Lightkeeper's 10th task, which is a real stretch for most people. The final one here is Ref's GPU. The reason I point this out specifically is not really for using to fill your Bitcoin farm, but it's depending on the flea market prices at the time, it can be the single best GP coin to ruble conversion tool given non-funded raid is available to sell on the flea these days. With GPUs just hitting around 1 million rubles at the moment, for 48 GP coins that values each coin at just under 21,000 rubles, which is the best that I've seen so far on the conversion. Arguably, another one of the most powerful element of Ref's arsenal is the keys that can be bartered for a Lega medal. These are much more rare than GP coins, only being given occasionally for dailies and weeklies, and although they can be used for a few different barters across Ref, the keys seem to be the best option. In particular, the grumpies hideout key at Ref level 2 that is found in Interchange Power Station can spawn class 6 plates, high-end ammo and rare weapons like the spear. Much like we said before, the value here is simply that you can't get this stuff from the traders directly anymore, or at least not very easily. So being able to run this room in particular can provide you with gear that is way out of reach of players of a similar trader level that don't have Ref. Whether this is balanced depends on your perspective. The scarcity of the Lega medals themselves and the fact that you have to run the 5 usage key yourself and extract with the loot successfully does mean that you have to do some actual work, firstly in arena to earn the medal and then secondly in raid afterwards. It's not time free to do this, which is one of the biggest issues that the community talks about in general with the traders, because just buying things in the stash for rubles is too easy in the context of the best items in the game. So ultimately, is Ref OP? I actually don't think so. He's certainly a powerful tool in your overall arsenal as a Tarkov player for sure, and it can give you a leg up in some ways compared to the regular traders, but you do have to do the work to get these advantages on an ongoing basis between arena dailies and hitting the keyed rooms. I think some of the GP prices could go up a little bit, like I said before with the AACPC, and maybe some of the experience for dailies after level 46 could be decreased a little bit in arena because it does seem a little imbalanced versus the base game, but overall I don't think it matters that much to actually say that arena gives you a massive advantage over players who aren't using it. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.